All right, sweet. And also, if you have any questions, I'm going to go through these slides, and this is the info packet that I'll send to you as well, so you have it. The only thing that's not added to the info packet on the virtual culture cohort is going to be the Q&A side of this. And so thank you so much, Robin. If you have questions, there's a Q&A at the bottom, or we can just use chat, either one of those. I have those pulled up. And we are going to, thank you, Whitney. Thank you, Scott. Great to see you guys on here. I know, listen, I'm tired of Zoom too. So thank you for being willing to jump on. Obviously, culture and people matter to you if you're jumping on another Zoom call, right? So thank you first for taking the time to be with me. I set it up for 45 minutes because this is really more informational about the virtual culture cohort that I'm launching in 2021. There's several other ideas around culture and culture of good and what we do and the services that we provide that we can certainly talk about. But my focus primarily right now, as we've at Culture of Good have made a pivot from how we used to engage with businesses. This is a new way of engaging. It's far more affordable and accessible, and quite frankly, I know it's going to add a tremendous amount of value for those of you that are in the culture building space, or you are designing a people strategy around your remote and office employees, your customers, and the community. So what Culture of Good does is we consult with companies to help them streamline their efforts between what many times is very siloed efforts with employees, customers, and community. However that plays out, it might be that you're an organization that has members, customers, clients, whatever you want to call them, employees, team members. We can get caught up in the semantics. Essentially, those that work with you, those that work for you, and those that are in the communities where you work. And so we're bringing those three very siloed efforts many times within an organization into one concerted effort. And yes, the link will be sent out to the attendees afterwards for sure. The reason I want you on this live is because I'm going to field the questions that you have and answer those. And from that, I'm going to compile a Q&A sheet that's going to come with these slides, rather with the information packet that I'll send to you. So essentially what we've done through the last 8 years ago, I launched Culture of Good. I'll give you a little bit of a background. My first 20 years in professional career, I was a full-time minister, pastor, missionary, philanthropist, did a lot of the work of just simply doing good in the world and creating opportunities for others to join me in volunteering their time, giving back, caring about the communities where they lived and the global community at large. 8 years ago, I was approached by a CEO of TCC, Scott Moorhead, and he offered an opportunity to me to come into his company and launch a movement that we eventually called Culture of Good. And this movement was all about engaging his employees. And at that point, I believe he had 2,500 employees scattered across 35 different states, a very remote work. Everyone was connected virtually, very much like what we find ourselves in today in most of our workplaces with our employees. At least some, if not all of our time is spent virtually talking through screens. I know many of you have not seen some of your colleagues face to face since March. I'm certainly one of those. And so how and when we built the Culture of Good was very much in this same, ironically, in this same type of framework where we were having to engage with a couple of employees that worked in Berwick, Pennsylvania, 2 or 3 employees that were in Atlanta, Georgia, a couple others that were in Arizona. And so spread out across the country, we were building this movement of Culture of Good and engaging the hearts and minds of employees in their everyday work, connecting what they did every day to a greater why. And so Scott hired me 8 years ago to come into his company and build this movement. Within 8 months of that work, we found that 93% of employees said that the culture of good gave them a sense of fulfillment in their everyday work. We saw far more new customer acquisition in the stores. And this was within a retail setting initially. And so we saw a lot of great business results because of this. But at the very heart of what we were doing, authentically doing this for, was to engage the minds and the hearts of employees and do what I had done for 20 years leading up to that. And that was the soul of a nonprofit in the for-profit work. And that was what I was attempting to do, was scale that good. Eventually we wrote the book, Build a Culture of Good. I'll be sending each one of you one of those. And from writing that book, we found that even after the book was done, and as you read the book, it's more the creation and evolution story of culture of good. And that led us into asking this question after the book was published, and that was this: how do we replicate this work? Because up to that point, we knew it was worthwhile work. We knew that it was adding meaning and fulfillment in the workplace. We knew that it was impacting the internal culture, peer-to-peer, and also the external culture, how employees were interacting with customers and how the community was engaging and with the company. And so we knew we had something really special. We just didn't know exactly what each one of those ingredients were. And so we hired organizational psychologists and thought leaders to come into the company and interview and talk and have conversations and really connect with the employees and even customers walking in the door, to ask them what made the culture of good so special to them, what made them want to stay working for the company because of the culture of good. And we saw that increase year over year. So essentially, these are the elements, if you're focused on culture and people, that we want to address, right? Employee engagement, customer engagement, and community engagement. Because when we start to address those areas and do so in a methodical, very prescriptive way, we can start to begin to measure whether we're accomplishing anything with our culture, and even answering the question, what is our culture? And so one of the challenges I would have for you today, maybe not while we're talking, but potentially afterwards, that you would sit down with a piece of paper and just write down, what are the 2 or 3 main objectives surrounding culture and people for 2021? What would you like to accomplish in 2021 around culture and building culture and engaging people? And what would those 3 main elements or 3 main objectives or goals that you have for this coming year? I think that's a good practice, because if we don't know what we're aiming for, we will never know whether we hit that target or not. And so this is a question I've had to look at within Culture of Good. It eventually, we built the tools and the process from bringing in the organizational psychologists and the team of thought leaders that came in to work with us to really build a 12-month solution so that other companies like yours and leaders within those companies can build the culture of good the same way that we did. We know it's great. We know it works. It's proven to work. It's proven to work in companies that are startups and with 8 employees, and we've scaled the culture of good beyond 8 employees to over 3,000 employees. So we know it's scalable. We know it's a simple process. It's incremental growing and building of the culture of good. And so it's not just simply sending out surveys every quarter and trying to get a snapshot of whether our employees are engaged or not within that quarter. We don't do surveys. What's unique about what we do, it's about implementation and execution. And so how are we facilitating the building of culture and beyond surveys and getting snapshots of where our employees or customers are? How are we doing that? And then how do we do this well? And the way that we found to do this well is to streamline, as I mentioned, all 3 of those efforts within one. And that allows you to put all the resources that you would have for 3 different siloed efforts into one: the employees, the customer, and the community. So quarantine happened, and I, up to that point, had been traveling and going around the world speaking about the culture of good. And last year we launched what was called the Culture Good in a Box, that 12-month solution. We started working with 2 companies to help them begin building the culture of good. One of them was a global company. It was a lot to take on as we just launched. We beta tested within their organization as well as within a startup that was within our family of companies at Culture of Good. And from both of those experiences, we found that what we had built, the Culture Good in a Box, really worked well when I was involved in that process. And having all my keynote speaking and traveling completely disappear, I really had some self-reflection and reflected on the business and took a step away from it for a moment. And so what do we do moving forward at Culture of Good? We know we have something really special here. We know that, it's hard to argue with what it means when employees are connected and engaged. We all know what results out of that: productivity, engagement, obviously happiness or emotional well-being and health, which I think is really important. Also, connecting what you do to a greater why gives you a sense of purpose. It is very purpose-driven. It's people-centric. It's putting people first. It's knowing that if we can have people filled with purpose, then we'll have a business filled with profit. I should write that down. No, if you quote me on that, make sure you put my name. If we have people filled with purpose, we'll have business filled with profit. So the profitability will follow the purpose. It's what I call purposability. And so we looked at the business and I said, what if we began with 10 companies at the beginning of the year? And rather than it being well over $100,000 per company, if we were to engage them in an affordable way, an accessible way, and I was actively involved in mentoring and oversight and consulting with that group and really building a community of 10 like-minded leaders within a cohort, what kind of impact would that have? Because this is a unique way of building culture, because you would build your own instance of culture good within your organization, but while you're building your instance of culture of good, you would also have a community of other like-minded leaders in different industries and different verticals of what they do and what they offer, also building. So there's shared experience, there's community. Again, it's far more accessible, and you have the support that you have around you of other leaders that are doing the same type of work. And I come with this cohort, right? So I'll be leading this cohort. So if your business joins into this cohort, I'll be leading you and 9 other like-minded leaders through this process over 12 months of 2021. Now I've talked to about 6 or 7 companies. 5 of them so far have already said, you know what, we're really close to saying, let's go ahead and do this. We're going to talk a little bit more. So we may only have 5 more spots for this first cohort. So if we end up filling this cohort up, we'll just begin another one, depending on how many sign up for this. So I just wanted to kind of give you a little background as to how we get up to this point. It's virtual. We'll meet once a month and go through the Culture Good in a Box together. So we'll have review over the last month's work, and then we'll go over the objectives and what the coming month is going to require. So let's go ahead and look at this here. So again, that was a little bit about me. Since we've built the Culture of Good, TCCs Culture of Good continues to grow year over year. Their efforts in the community continue to grow. Some of you that may be on here know of TCC and the work that they do, not only to engage with their employees, but also the community at large. Scott Moorhead, my business partner and the CEO of TCC, and my partner here with the Culture of Good, was ranked in, I believe, the top 15 CEOs during the pandemic by Glassdoor, by the employees. And so the employees really are engaged with the leadership of the business now, because this, for several years, the company's been committed to making promises to continue to build a culture of good within the business. So year over year, it continues to grow in that way. So what we believe at the culture of good is that the health of your organization is reflected in the health of your culture. So let me give you a little bit of a description here as I'm going through these this informational slides. And really what I did is I just took the informational pack that I'll send to you and I put it in these slides here. So your company's sponsor. So let's start there. So what we do is we have a 12-month solution called Culture Good in a Box. I lead the cohort. We have 10 companies that would be joining this cohort, this first one. And each one of those companies will have what we call a sponsor. Essentially what they are is the champion of doing this work within the organization. Maybe you, maybe someone that is over people or culture within the organization. We need a leader that has the ability to have the ear of the executive team, the leadership team, to continue to get buy-in, have the ear of the staff so that as they continue to promote the culture of good and the efforts behind building the culture of good, that they have the influence within the organization to be able to do so. So the sponsor, you'll join 9 other leaders to establish a community of leaders and businesses that are building a culture of good, as I mentioned. What we'll do is we'll not only work with the sponsor, but we'll also help you develop and design within your organization and build a culture team. And we won't get into all the weeds here today. There's certainly a lot of details that go into this, but the work is in the hands of the sponsor and the team that they build around them. So the Virtual Culture Cohort is for a term of 12 months. And is led through the 10 steps of building a culture of good for all stakeholders. So the sponsor and team would be required to attend monthly strategy sessions and implement the monthly objectives. So every month, as part of the 12-month course or solution, there's objectives, there's actions, everything is really step-by-step guided for you, so you don't have to have questions around, all right, we want a culture effort, we want to engage our employees, we want to engage our customers, but how do we do this? This answers how. So every single step, it's incremental growth and building of culture of good over 12 months. So this is not, again, this is not a survey you're going to send out and then hire a consultant to come in and tell you how to change your business. This is going to optimize the work you're already doing with your employees, with your customers, and with your community. So where you have put efforts into each of those buckets or each of those silos, we're going to bring that together for you and optimize that work and streamline it by streamlining it so that it becomes one concerted effort together. So here's some of the results that you should expect as part of the cohort, or those that are a part of the cohort. One is really around finding the cause of your organization, and that's what we would begin with in the first phase, and we'll talk about how this is phased out here in a moment. But to most effectively engage your employees remote in office and your customers. So one of the goals that you might write down is the 2 or 3 that you write down in terms of the culture for this coming year would be, we want to build a culture that helps to lower undesired turnover. We're going to link that cause authentically to your business. So again, driving the profitability, but with purpose. Communicate effectively or efficiently to connect to employee and customers' passions. So that's where we get into the heart of the matter for building culture. And that's also can have an impact of increasing new customer acquisition. Creating buy-in with all stakeholders through internal and external efforts. Your culture isn't just internal, it's also external. So we're going to look at both of those and utilizing culture of good in terms of attracting and retaining the best talent. As you go through the process of building a culture of good, you become certified as a culture of good company. So those that are part of the cohort will be certified as a culture of good company that will be certification and an icon that you can place on your website. You can use as you're recruiting new talent, as you're talking about the company. I was asked yesterday, like, I was talking to a CEO and he said, I just really, I don't know how to answer the question, what is our culture? What makes our culture special? And we can simply say, well, it's the people, and they let us wear jeans on Fridays or whatever. My goal after this cohort is that we have the same results that we saw at TCC, and that's over 90% of your employees stating that culture of good gives them that sense of fulfillment in their everyday work. If someone were to walk off the street and ask one of your employees, or a family member to one of your employees, ask what makes your work so special? I would love for that answer to be, it's our culture. It's who we are and why we do what we do. So that's what we do in embedding the culture within the everyday activities of the team. That's why we're not just a survey culture company. We're looking at embedding the culture. We believe that if it's not embedded, it's not culture. Culture is what most people, or how most people feel, believe, and behave most of the time. I'm going to say that again, that your culture is how most of your people feel, believe, and behave most of the time. And so we're going to embed that culture within the business and increase team engagement. So we're going to build teams and then make commitments to sustain your culture efforts. Once you've built a culture of good, what do we do beyond the 12 months? How do we sustain that? We'll continue to move forward here. Again, if you have questions as we're going through, I'm not going to stop and give time for that, but I am going to answer questions at the end. I'm going to afford some time at the end to be able to do that. Sorry. So this is really the image that we have, that Venn diagram of communities, customers, and our employees. And that sweet spot right in the middle is what we've done in terms of saying that's really where the culture of good lives. That's what we talk about when we streamline your efforts. When we optimize your culture, we do so by streamlining all three of those into one. And so the culture of good lives in that area right in between all three of those as they come together. As we were building the culture of good, part of the work that we did was we were running numbers. We were asking, like, does this actually work in real time? Not just statistics that you can Google and download off, Instagram. Like, does this actually work? And what we found is, for every dollar that TCC invested in their culture of good efforts, there was an $11 return. And part of that was because there was a 20% reduction in employee turnover within the company. That was significant. And so the ROI is there. It makes sense financially for the business. But again, 93% of employees stated that culture of good gave them a sense of fulfillment. 44% of employees stated that that the culture of good was a contributing factor to choosing to work for the company. That was important because we were hiring a different level of talent. It wasn't that who we were hiring before wasn't good. It was, we were just seeing great talent come into the company. And 44% of employees, I mean, that's a huge number. And what's even greater than that, 82% of employees that were surveyed, and this was all part of the same survey. It was a survey, and also it was part of the interview process. 82% stated that the culture of good was going to be a factor for them to choosing to continue to work for the company. 82%. So now we're talking retention. You know the numbers. You can go online and get out the calculators, and I mean, there's calculators that you can run the numbers for yourself. And once you find out what your percentage of turnover is, and the cost of recruiting, onboarding, training, developing, and the cost of losing the talent that you have, the ROI is certainly there. And so I wanted to share that we really saw some great results out of building it. So how does this work? There's 3 phases that we'll go through. The first phase is right around 6 months of the 12-month process of the cohort. The first 6 months is what we call the find your cause. The second is the 5 promises, and the third is sustain. The find your cause is a cause that is the purpose of your business beyond profitability. So it's what you're going to do in terms of giving back to community, giving back to the world, but it's aligned with the strategic intent of your business and also your core competency. So a lot of times companies are giving, doing good, sponsoring kids' baseball team jerseys. Every time an employee comes in and says, I need money for this, or can we give to this? Can we get involved in this? All of that is good work, but how do we do great? How do we do it great? How we do that great is we find a cause that the company can get behind that's tied into the purpose and the strategy of the business, but also the core competency of the business. So it's going to make sense as to why you're doing that good in the world. The 5 promises in the second phase allows us and you to measure whether as a company culture that you're building a healthy culture. So those 5 promises are around caring about people in the world around you, driving the business to greater success so you can do more good, connecting with people around you, inspiring others to do good with you, and then being authentic in your words and actions. We have a way of measuring that within the organization and rolling that out and promoting that throughout your organization. And what that does is it creates a common language of culture, and that helps to even further embed it after 6 months. So think about the 12 months. We're continuing to embed culture of good within every area of your business. And so every department, every individual, every team, the entire organization as a whole begins to collectively build a culture of good together. Each one of those promises are then measurable, and we use those promises as a way to say, if every individual, if every team, and if the organization lives up to those as best as they can, then those are health indicators for us. We would say that the more you're living up to those promises, the healthier your culture is. And then we introduce a way to measure that through assessment. And that leads into 3, which is the sustainability. Again, there's 10 steps through the cohort, and those are executable steps with objectives, actions, reflections, plan discussions, and checkpoints. So as part of the cohort, we won't move on to step 2 or month 2 until we've accomplished the checkpoints and objectives of step 1. And that will continue. And so there's accountability involved, and also just a lot of fun together as a community. So we'll be building community, building a collective of like-minded leaders like yourself that want to do this work. What we do is very strategic. And so we have a sponsored journal that you'll receive at the beginning of the cohort that will allow you to have a journal that will take you through the objectives, and that we will use as a playbook or a guide throughout the 12 months. So you'll know where you left off and where you are in the process, as well as having very clearly defined steps and goals for each one of those months. So you don't have to sit back and say, okay, what do I do now? You know, it's culture is so mystical and so otherworldly, and how do we wrap our arms around it? The strategy that we've set up through this process allows for you to be guided, and it aligns your efforts with the other leaders as well. We're going to build teams within your organization, or a team that's going to be involved in the facilitation or execution of this work. The events that take place, which don't happen every week or every month, but we do have some events that happen throughout the year that build teams and build your engagement with the community and engagement with your employees and your customers, and also your storytelling. How and who is telling the story of your culture internally and then externally as well. And then what makes also Culture of Good unique is the sustainability of it, and how we have measurable, observable behaviors that align with your values and the mission and vision of your company. And so those observable behaviors allow for you as in your management to be able to coach teams and to be able to coach others based on those, as well as when we live up to what we call our 5 promises as introduced in phase 2, those observable behaviors drive those promises and living up to those promises as well. And so now we know how to begin to measure based objectively and not just subjectively. So whereas before you may have sent out a survey and got back, all right, 70% of our employees are engaged. Why? So then, and then the next time you send out a survey, it's 75%. You think, wow, we're making headway. Are you really, are the employees just having a better day? Did they just get their bonuses? There's a lot of factors involved. But when we talk about culture of good, we take the experience of each individual and the team and the organization, and we define the culture of good based on if we're living up to the 5 promises, and that is our health indicator. And that's how we know whether we're truly building a culture of good as part of the cohort. So some of the questions that I'm asked, and maybe you'll have this question as well, is how much time does this take? I'm sure you're going to want to know how much this is going to cost. I think that's the next slide. We'll talk about that. We're looking at 2 to 3 hours a week for the sponsor. This is incremental work, small, bite-sized, incremental work that happens week to week over 12 months. All right, so this again is not a program that you're just going to roll out to the company and everybody's going to freak out and say, okay, here's the next flavor of the month. Here's another thing that we got to do. This is simply defining the culture that you already have and optimizing it and calling it culture of good. All right, and so you already have efforts with employees in engaging them and working with them. You have efforts with your customers and acquiring new customers, whether through marketing or whatever it is. You, I'm sure, give back in some way. You're involved in some way of caring about the communities where you do business, you do good. That's all great. This building of culture of good, because we can streamline all of those efforts, requires just 2 to 3 hours per week from the sponsor and support given also to the team that works with them. And so we're not looking again at needing to hire someone full-time to do this. The money that's spent on culture of good is spent on the cohort and any efforts that you embark on or engage with beyond or to build the culture of good. And so giving back, which you already put resource behind. If it's employee engagement, you already put resource behind. So those resources then are allocated in the same way, but toward one concerted effort as part of this cohort. Implementation is unique in terms of what we do. And so you'll be trained with oversight as you're implementing the culture of good over the 12 months. So as I mentioned earlier, the work that we had done previously with companies in our consulting was quite pricey. It's a proven way of building culture and measuring it and knowing whether you're building a good culture or not. So we are offering this cohort with over $100,000 in resources, and that includes me with again leading this cohort with you. And then the results, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to set up 3 outcomes. And it may be the ones that you write down on your piece of paper we may work with, or you may work with your executive team and talk to them this week and say, all right, what are we really trying to drive toward? It's direction that gives us results. It's not intention. And so let's get beyond what we intend to do in terms of culture and people, and let's go straight to setting a direction and setting a course and saying, here's the results that we want. And over 12 months, we're going to build a culture of good. And we believe that in those 12 months, we're going to reach those and accomplish those 3 results in 2021, regardless of pandemic, regardless of whether our business is going well or not doing well. this is what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on those 3 results and 3 outcomes. And each quarter, I'll meet with you individually, if you'd like to do so, to reevaluate and strategize and to see, all right, have we met each of the milestones for each quarter leading us to those 3 results? So we'll set up the 3 results. We'll have quarterly milestones that we need to hit in order to reach those 3 results at the end of 2021, whether that's, again, new customer acquisition, employee turnover, employee engagement, whatever those are. We want to be able to ensure that if we set those as goals, we're actually reaching those quarter by quarter. So those are that's how that works. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about cost here. Focused on the middle, we do offer video training around culture of good, the 5 promises. You can certainly look into some of that on our website, cultureofgood.com. I host workshops specifically around finding your cause. And that's a 2 to 4 hour workshop, as well as the 5 promises, and that's the introduction. Those workshops are included in the culture cohort. So with the culture cohort, it's $2,000 a month. Again, we'll reevaluate every quarter whether we're hitting our milestones. If we have a company that joins the cohort and 3 months later they say, you know, this just really isn't working, can we shift our milestones, shift our goals over the year? We can certainly do that. If they say, you know, it's just not working for us at all, we don't like where this is headed, no harm done. Ultimately, the only way that I accomplish what I want to accomplish in terms of the impact I want to have on the world and on the workplace is by you having that same type of impact. And so, although it's a 12-month cohort, we'll reevaluate every quarter to ensure that you're finding the value that you wanted when you engaged with us and started with us as a cohort. Let's see. All right. So that's the info pack. I'm going to add a lot of Q&A to that. That's really the summary of what the culture cohort is about. Again, it's virtual. I'll be working directly with you and 9 other leaders. If we say by chance we don't have 10 sign up for the cohort, like I mentioned, we already have a really solid 5 as a part of it. And so we're going to launch the cohort. If we have more than 10, we will have additional cohorts going in conjunction. And what's unique about this is throughout the month, not only will you have the call with me, the 2-hour call with me, where we'll go over the previous month, what worked, what didn't work, what worked well, what didn't work well, what needs to change, what challenges did you face, and then the other hour then looking into that coming month's work based on the sponsor journal. And then what you have every single month is a platform, really a course that's built as a guide for the 12 months. So that journal is the guide, and then every step of the way based on the guide, you'll maybe look at a few videos, watch 2 videos that are 3 minutes long. There's documents to download. It tells you who to delegate what to, who needs to see the videos, who needs to read the welcome letter, who needs to be engaged in what work for that week. And then that'll lead us into the next month's meeting. Now, in between our meetings, we're setting up a community group that on Slack, where if you have questions or you hit a roadblock or you had an obstacle and just need support, or you just, want to reach out at any moment, we'll have that set up as a community. So we'll be sharing shared resources. We'll be talking about our own experiences, and it'll be a shared experience going forward. So you won't be doing this work on your own. I only have a couple minutes left. I didn't realize it was already over. Do you have any questions? You're free to stay with me. I'll stay on here for as long as you want to stay on. If you have questions about what you've heard, I know it was a lot in 40 minutes actually. But if you have questions, if you want to throw that in the Q&A below, or in the chat, and let me know how I can answer any questions that you might have around this. Know who the solid 5 participating companies are. What I can tell you is what industries they're in. So we have a landscaping company that has 250 employees, and they are going to be joining us. We have a logistics company, so they do warehousing, packing and shipping, and so we have a warehousing business. They have 20 to 30 employees. And so they will be joining us. We have a company that runs funeral homes, and so they have funeral homes in Indiana and Ohio and Florida, and so they're going to be joining us as well. They have funeral homes and rehabilitation centers. They're facing a lot of, obviously, because of the pandemic and burnout from employees, and I'm sure all of your employees are feeling the burnout as well, but they're losing really great staff. So one of their goals is to keep their good talent, obviously their nurses and caretakers within the business. And then we have an association that works with companies that are in Pennsylvania. And so they're going to be building a culture of good within their association and then helping their members to build that as well. So thank you, Scott, for that question. So again, we're not looking at putting, say we had 10 landscaping businesses that joined. It would be great if a couple of those were in the cohort together, but ultimately we want to learn from each other, depending on, again, yes, the diversity of those groups. It's all over the place. And the reality is we've engaged with almost every industry I could imagine, financial, medical. We've been in the industry of retail, again, warehousing, your everyday worker that, having a great culture doesn't require being like a app development company with 20 people in an office, and everybody's hipsters and cool. We can build culture and engage people that are in a warehouse or running a lawnmower, pushing snow through the winter. I'm in Indiana. It was 20-some degrees this morning. So the diversity is something that I think is going to be really unique about what we're doing with this as well. This is the first cohort. Again, this is the first one that we've put in. So it's going to be a learning process for all that are in the cohort as well as myself. I'm really excited about this and looking forward to working with at least the 5 that have joined in so far. Anyone else have any questions? I'll wait here for a moment. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions. So thank you all for jumping on today. If you want to reach out to me, you can do so on ryan@cultureofgood.com. I'll be reaching out to you, each of you as well. I realize I don't have your addresses, so I need your address to send one of my books to. So if you get the email, check your spam. I'll also be sending out the recording for this, so you have this as well as the informational packet, and I'll put together a Q&A sheet. I've been asked several other questions as well that I can address on that Q&A. So if you want to introduce this to your executive team, or maybe you are on the executive team, introduce it to your colleagues. If you're a CEO, president, whoever you are, whatever layer of leadership that you're in, if you want to share this with others, go for it. As well as if you want to share this with those outside of your organization as well. That's something that we're talking about in terms of how to reduce the cost based on referral. So that's something that I'll introduce and share with you through email as well coming up. So thank you guys for jumping on. I really appreciate your time. Oh, sorry, Whitney, thank you. Your 3 outcome goals that you measure, are those internal measurements or external of the impact on the community too. It would include both internal and external. If we were to work with a company that said, all right, we have a couple internal goals and we have one or two external, it's not as if 3 is the only thing we're going to be focused on. So if you have 4 or 5, we find that it's easier for companies to really focus on those 3. And so that's a really great question, Whitney. I'm going to write that down. I've not been asked that. I would encourage you to stay around 3, 4 at the most, but have internal and external components to those goals and to those measurements that you have. Thank you for that question. I'll include that in the Q&A. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Robin. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I want you to know that this is what I feel is very close to a life calling for me. This is very purposeful, and I'm excited to see the type of impact that we can have on the workplace and world. So thank you guys for jumping on. I'll reach out to you individually, reach back out to me, and let me know if this is what the next steps are in terms of introducing this within your organization if you're interested. Thank you guys. Talk to you soon. Stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great rest of the week.